Anyway, what happened is I started marketing. My services to my local attorneys, and it was one attorney, one case in particular. I came across this attorney. He had this case, and he didn't have anything to do with it. So the bottom line is the patient was in an auto accident. She went to the emergency room. There was no fractures, no dislocations. Was told to give pain medication, muscle relaxers, send her on her way. Well, this goes on for weeks and weeks. She still has problems. She goes back to her GP because she's still suffering from back pain as a result of this accident. Same thing, takes x-rays, nothing wrong with her. You know, they look for broken bones, no broken bones. And gives her muscle relaxers pills, send her on her way. So the insurance company was offering her nothing, didn't offer her anything in this accident because they had two medical doctors. They had the emergency room and their GP saying there was nothing wrong with her based on their medical findings. So I explained what we do as chiropractors and the difference, and especially joint motion and joint anomalies and joint dysfunction, which is a very specific testing and treatment that's unique only to chiropractic. And so I explained this to him. So he sent me the patient. So we treated her, and she did better. But then by the time she got to me, she was already halfway through the healing phases and already had some permanency going on. So we helped her, but she ended up with a permanent injury. So the insurance company still offered nothing. So I explained to the attorney what we had, and here's what we had. So we had a mechanism of injury. We had the signs and symptoms, and she had on the physical exam findings, she had range of motion that was limited her gross range of motion was normal. Her overpressure was abnormal with pain. And then when I checked her joint motion with motion x-rays, which medical providers never do, then when I checked that, she had really aberrant joint motion. So she did have full range of motion, but aberrant joint motion. And then she had a positive McNabb's line. That's when the facets encroach upon the inferior facets, encroach upon the superior facets. And no neurologicals, no disc bulge. And then she definitely had some ADL restrictions. Primarily, she had trouble picking up her child. She had a 6-year-old child she couldn't pick up. And those were some of the main findings. Not much of a case, you would think. Especially with two medical doctors saying there's nothing wrong with her. So I go and testify in court for that case. And I put it all together, and I showed the mechanism of injury. I showed the subject. I had the subjective findings. I had the objective findings. The objective findings, I not only had the subjective and the hybrid subjective and objective with the orthopedic tests. Those are hybrid subjective and objective. Then I also had objective tests with that. I had the x-rays. I had joint motion x-rays. So I had all three. I had subjective, hybrid subjective, and objective with the mechanism of injury. And then I had the ADLs that were affected, and then I had a permanent injury that was based on the AMA guides. And I walked right through that case, and I explained to that case exactly what I just told you to a jury. And she was about 32, 33 years old. And then I explained how that pathology, those altered joint motions, the altered joint motion, which was very evident on the x-ray to somebody who knew what to look for. The medical doctors didn't even know to look for it because they look for fractures and dislocations. You know, that's it, and a disc bulge. So if it didn't fit that category, and then there was nothing there according to them. So that aberrant pathology of those joint motions, that's a pathology that produces abnormal wear and tear and leads to degenerative joint changes and arthritis. Pain, discomfort, restriction, well, that affects ADLs, in other words, the human being's life. And I explained all that to the jury, and I explained the treatment, how the treatment was based on the three phases, the science of the three phases of healing. And this patient ended up with a permanent injury, and then they calculated out her age versus an actuarial scale when she would die. And it turns out that the jury came back and awarded that case $110,000. And that was from zero. That case went from absolutely nothing with the support of 2 medical doctors saying there was nothing wrong with her, to me testifying. I was the only medical provider who testified in that case. I testified against 2 medical doctors. No disc injury, no nerve injury, no concussion. It was altered arthrokinematics. It was a pathological condition. It's the #1 disability in the United States. That's the precursor to the #1 disability, arthritis. It's a massive problem. Causes a lot of pain, discomfort, and dysfunction. Most people, especially doctors, don't know how to document it or tell the story. And that's really where the big problem is in healthcare, especially with these soft tissue injuries. Well, now, to be honest with you, it's pretty easy to document it. It's pretty easy to document the subjective. It's pretty easy to document, to get the hybrid of subjective and objective tests that correlate with the subjective and the mechanism of injury. And then combine that with the objective. You got a great, I mean, it's a real easy to tell that story with all those findings, and then match it to the science of how we heal as human beings. Well, you're not going to get a medical doctor up there disagreeing with the 3 phases of healing. Nobody will. That's pure science. So that was kind of the case for me that turned everything on, and from that point, it was the largest civil suit in the county. And then, of course, that attorney now referred me all his patients. What else is he going to do with soft tissue injuries? Just lose money left and right. And then his circle of influence found out about the case, because it was the largest civil suit in the county. So that was it. And I didn't do any more marketing from that point on. And it was pretty much referrals. And then I just kept documenting the cases, all those soft tissue injury cases like that, and especially the ones that may come in periodically with a disc injury. That's the other thing the attorney learned is that when the patient has a disc injury, you can almost double that case by combining the soft tissue injury. But a lot of attorneys don't know that. They'll just run with the disc injury and settle. Because they generally don't have a doctor that knows how to document it and then knows how to submit the documentation, and if need be, go to court and defend it. Win the case. There's not many people that can do that. And that's what I teach. I teach how to do that. And so that's what we're going to be doing today, is going over those exact steps.